we're going to talk about today, or I know what we're going to talk about today, is this massive move that we did from from Ethereum mainnet to Base, and there were a bunch of different aspects to it. And to zoom way out, Unlock DAO has been around for several years. At this point, was originally deployed back in, when was it? 2021 on mainnet. 2020. When was it? When was it originally set up, Julian?
I think it was late 2020. It was actually around Thanksgiving 2020. So it's going to be 4 years in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so it's almost ready for kindergarten here in the States. But that all said, um, realized that there were a number of issues with really trying to do governance, really trying to have the DAO and everything set up on mainnet. So what we're going to talk through today was actually a very long process that needed to happen in a certain order in order to do that move and really, pack up the entire DAO's house and move it to a new neighborhood. And so we're going to talk through a bunch of different things. We're going to talk a little bit through why we needed to do that, or why we thought we needed to do that, and then through a number of the different steps. And we're going to get into some pretty deep detail on these. So it was deploying a new token, setting up governance, smart contracts, getting the existing governance token moved from mainnet over to Base, moving the treasury, changing the ownership of contracts. And over the next, probably 35, 40 minutes or so, I think we're going to dig through a bunch of those types of things. So I guess, number one, why do you feel, Julian, that the migration needed to happen? Why did the DAO need to move from mainnet to Base?
Yeah, I mean, the number one reason is like the ecosystem has evolved. When we set up the DAO, again, Thanksgiving 2020, there was just Ethereum mainnet. Polygon, I don't think was live yet, and at the time it was definitely not called Polygon. It was called Matic. And so there was only one network on which the protocol could ever exist, which was, again, Ethereum mainnet. And we wanted to, already have the same vision that we have today, which is to say that anybody that's going to use the protocol should be able to kind of join its governance. And so we deployed on Ethereum mainnet at the time because, again, that was the only place. But already, if you go back to the blog post and all of that we wrote at the time, we kind of knew that eventually, we would need to scale with the space. And what has changed mostly in the last 4 years on that front specifically is like the emergence of all of the initially the side chains. The first one that we had support for is what was called XDAI and is now called Gnosis Chain, then Polygon, then Optimism, then Arbitrum, and et cetera, et cetera. And so all of these sidechains and then the L2s, we wanted to be in a situation where similarly, the users of the protocol could own them. So the first thing we done a couple of months, years ago now, 2 years ago, was to create a very interesting scheme where the governance could happen on one chain on mainnet and control all of the contracts on all of the sidechain and L2. But then the next logical step, and that's really the answer to your question, Chris, is realizing that, we don't really have to do governance on mainnet. And the problem with governance on mainnet is that it's expensive. Mainnet, if you think about it, is kind of the Fort Knox of the Ethereum ecosystem. It's obviously extremely secure, extremely powerful, but at the same time, means that every single transaction, every single state change, as it's being called technically, is going to cost a lot of money. And so we realize, like, for governance, maybe we don't actually need to be there. Since we had this cross-chain governance in place, maybe we should have, and that's what we actually did, governance happening on one of the cheaper L2s and sidechains or sidechains in a way that would be secure. So that's important. That was kind of a strong requirement. But where voting would be much cheaper and executing transaction would be much easier. And so this way we don't have to have a lot of the, bandages or, a lot of the, don't call them hacks because they're a real thing, but like a lot of the kind of little techniques that we use to kind of maintain the decentralization of the DAO without without requiring everybody to vote. So long story short, to say is like we set up on mainnet, we had support for the cross-chain governance, and then we eventually realized, like, you know what, we don't actually need to even govern on mainnet. We can govern on L2, and that's why we picked Base.
Awesome. And Stella and Post, you've both been very active members of the DAO. Stella, you're lead steward for the DAO. As participants, as governors, as folks who were really driving a lot of the proposals and a lot of the activities in the Unlock DAO, what were some of your thoughts about that? What were your feelings? What were some of the things that you were recognizing or feeling from the rest of the community when things were on mainnet?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that I heard most frequently was, yeah, I would like to participate in governance, but it's just too expensive for me. I mean, we have a lot of creators in Unlock Protocol, and kind of made sense to me to hear that, right? So yeah, this is also why among some other creators, we're kind of bugging Julian a little bit with this idea of, hey, can we just do governance, right? Creators always think like, can't we just? And then it turns out that over time that Julian and the Unlock Labs team tackled this for the DAO, it was actually a major undertaking. So I'm feeling very appreciative that yeah, you guys invested the time and energy to make governance more accessible to a diverse set of voices in the DAO. And so now comes the learning of individuals in the DAO to actually go initiate more proposals, right? Go and queue and execute existing proposals. There is no excuse anymore to wait until David, myself, or Danny are doing this. So yeah, I think there's a good next learning step for many DAO participants to become more self-responsible also, and grow as people in the DAO.
Awesome. Thank you. And Post, anything you'd add to that as somebody who's been very active in the DAO over the last years?
No, not really. I mean, that basically kind of sums it up. I think the cost for voting, especially during the bull runs, are, obviously as price goes up, gas goes up, and therefore it becomes a little bit less of an ability to budget in what might be proposals and get it going forward. But we are definitely glad to be moved over to Base and costing cents on the dollar for votes now, so to speak.
Awesome. Yeah, because I remember, during 2021, 2022, just to do a simple vote was going to cost like $20, $30 US equivalent in ETH gas or Ethereum gas on mainnet, which was just out of the reach and just not a reasonable thing. It'd be like going to a restaurant. It's like, yep. And every time you want to buy, or now not even going to a restaurant, going to a corner store, and it's like, yeah, when I buy this bag of popcorn, and it's $2 for the popcorn and $35 transaction fee. So let's not do that. So okay, so we have this compelling reason. We want, the DAO wants more folks who are going to be involved in governing, actually being active participants in driving this open source protocol forward. And we've got this big limiting factor of it's really slow, really cumbersome, really expensive to do it. And as we dug into it, again, there were 5 or 6 kind of major phases that had to all take place in the right order for this to happen. There needed to be a new governance token. And even before that, needed to figure out, okay, where are we going to move to? What neighborhood were we going to go to? Then once that was decided, needed to be a token on that new network. The smart contracts needed to be set up on that network as a new set of governance contracts. There needed to be a way for the existing members of the DAO who were participating in governance by holding UDT tokens on mainnet. How would they actually get the governance power moved over to the new neighborhood? Then move the treasury, then change the ownership of the contract, and get everything going. It sounds like, Stella, you may have some background noise going. Oh. So with that, Julian, can you comment a little on how Base was chosen as the new neighborhood to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I was the one with the back noise, so I'm sorry about this.
Okay. Okay.
Why did we choose? So moving away from Ethereum mainnet was the first goal. The second goal was to find a place where it was, I'd say, let's say second, not in order, not in importance, but in order, was say, okay, if we're going to find something else, we need to find something that is as secure as Ethereum mainnet, because obviously the last thing we want to do is lose control of the contract that of the protocol basically, and then have a place where it's much cheaper. And then a third consideration was like, well, where is the network the most active? Base launched about a year ago, and in less than a year, it became our most active network. I'd say, for the longest time, Polygon was the most active, but then maybe we can go into details of why Polygon wouldn't necessarily work well for us, for the DAO. And then Base became the second one, but Base being an L2 has that, I'd say not guaranteed, but these level of security that is eventually, and I think yesterday actually the Base team launched some really interesting feature, makes it as secure as Ethereum. And so that's, and obviously very cheap as well. And we know the Coinbase team has been working day and night to lower the cost of running contracts on Base. And so really kind of it came down to kind of usage of the protocol is mostly happening on Base. This was also, it is also becoming the most active L2 across the board, not just for Unlock. Then it's as secure as Ethereum mainnet, or will eventually be as secure as Ethereum mainnet. And then obviously it is cheap. So that's why we chose Base. And yeah, so that's the answer to your question, Chris.
Cool. And so, okay, so we know where we're moving to at this point. So the first of kind of the big things that needed to get done was set up a new governance token on Base. What were some of the things that needed to be done before that, and then what was that process itself like to actually set up this new governance token, the Unlock Protocol token, or UP token on Base? Were there things that needed to be done? What were some of the steps? Take us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so actually setting up a token, is definitely something that needs to happen first, but it happens because it's required for something else that I'd say is more important in the end. It's like the DAO is two smart contract, and that's true on any network that you're on. It was true on mainnet. It's a smart contract that we call the governor, which is really kind of the place where proposals are being sent and then people are voting on. So think of it as your local poll station in that way, if you think about elections. And then the second thing is the treasury contract. The treasury contract is obviously controlled by the governor, and it can do, it can transfer funds, it can transfer or perform actions based on whether these proposals have been successful at the governor level. And so we realize, okay, we need to deploy these two contracts. And anybody can deploy two contracts anywhere if they want, obviously. But one thing that they have to do to deploy, especially the governor, is to pick what is going to be the voting token. Like, okay, if you have a governor, you still need to decide what is the, what's the, I was going to say currency, but it's not the currency because it's not so much money, but it's like, what are people going to vote with, and in the context of DAOs, most, if not all of the DAOs, use ownership of a token. And so we need to do a new token that is, or we need to have a token on Base that would be matching that purpose. Initially, we thought we could just bridge the UDT token, the legacy governor's token. The problem is like the token contract specifically needs to have a bunch of characteristics in order to be used for voting. Especially, it needs to have this thing called delegation, which is a way to say, even though I own the token, the weight associated with votes is linked to somebody else or some other address. And it needs to have a bunch of other, capabilities around what we call snapshotting. So it's different from the snapshot that we use, but it's really kind of a way to kind of assess how many tokens someone has and how many votes that represents at any point. And so bridging the UDT token would not work because the bridged token wouldn't have these properties. So we realized, okay, then we need to do a new token. We cannot just do, bridge the UDT and say, okay, cool, that's going to be on the governor contract. We need to create a new token. And that's why we created the UP token, the Unlock Protocol token. At the same time, we took, a little bit of learnings as well over the years of what happened with UDT, which is we need, more supply. We need to reshuffle, if you want, the supply between us and the Unlock Foundation and things like that. But that's how we ended up with a new token.
Got it. So we've got the token set up at this point. So that's there. So now there's this token over there, but it doesn't do anything. I mean, it's just this thing that is a new ERC20 that's sitting over on Base. You mentioned a little bit more about the governance contracts. Now, there were governor smart contracts that were set up on mainnet. Needed to set up an entirely new set of governor smart contracts on Base. Can you take us through that a little bit?
Sure. Well, so basically, governor contract, there's multiple flavors of these, but the most popular one is the Open Zeppelin one. And so what we ended up doing is just deploying that contract. It's kind of deploying I don't know what the best way to describe this, but it's deploying an application on a specific computer, which is that Base blockchain. And so that's what we've done. We took the Open Zeppelin contract for both governor and time lock and configured them to match the configuration that existed on mainnet in terms of voting delays and stuff like this, and then we published them on the Base network. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So we needed to set up a new governor contract, a new time lock contract. Those actually needed to be set up on Base, basically sort of building the new house in the new neighborhood to do all of the governance activities.
Exactly. So that was kind of deploying these contracts is setting the new. You're right. The new the new engine. It's not necessarily a house. I mean, it's the heart of the house, because in the end, the house would be more the walls around this, and that's kind of the tally UI and things like that. But yeah, you're right. We deployed a new engine of the governance on the Base network, and we realized okay, this one needs to take a different gas. And gas is a confusing term, but a different kind of power source. It is not the UDT token; it's the UP token that we shipped. And so, one thing that I should mention: we launched a token, but obviously our goal was not to launch, a new token per se, and kind of forget about the existing token. The goal was to again launch a new token, but allow anyone who had any of the old tokens to redeem the new ones. If they wanted to, or so that they could join us without really kind of diluting, if you want, to any of these people. And so what we launched at the same time, and that was kind of the DAOs. Eventually, the main decision of the DAO is say, okay, we're going to ship. The Unlock Labs team created a swapping contract, a contract that would let anyone redeem their old token for new tokens, or the other way around if they wanted to. And because in practice, anybody can now deploy, could now deploy yet another governor contract and another token. But the only reason why this becomes the Unlock protocol kind of governor is because there is this swapping mechanism, because people that have the existing UDT can now get up and control governance on the second network.
So the folks who were doing governance on mainnet, they needed to get that governance power over to Base. So they needed to bridge those tokens over to Base, the UDT, and then swap them for this new flavor, this new formulation of gas, to continue to butcher the metaphor, that was going to power the engine of governance on the Base side. So needed to bridge over and then swap once it was bridged from UDT to UP. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, because again, so that swapping contract needed to exist. So okay, let me clarify. We have two tokens then. We have the UDT on mainnet, and then the UP on Base. And so there's kind of two operations that need to happen. Is you need to go from one chain to the other and from one token to the other. And you can't do both of these things at once. You have to first, change chain and then change token, or first change token and then change chain. We assume that it would be cheaper, and actually that's true, to first go change chain. So take your UDT from mainnet, bring it to Base. Once you have it on Base, then swap it from UDT to UP. And so these two operations were required, or are required. People can still do this. I think there's still a few people that have not bridged over the UDT. But yeah, so these are the two operations. And then eventually you have UP on the other side. And you have exactly as many percentage, or as you have exactly the same share of supply before and after. So if you have 1% of the supply of UDT, well, you get 1% of the supply of UP. And what's important also to realize, like, you and anybody can actually go backwards if they wanted to, go back to the legacy DAO on mainnet. Well, they could just swap back the UP for UDT, then bridge the UDT from base to mainnet, and then use that for anything they want on mainnet or actually on any other chain.
Got it. So we've got now the folks who are participating in governance. They have bridged over their UDT on mainnet to UP or to base. They've swapped that UDT for UP tokens on base. So we've got the governance contracts set up. We've got individuals who are part of the community who are able to participate and actually, change the levers in the way the protocol is governed. Now, on mainnet, the DAO had a treasury that had a number of different tokens, number of different things in it. Now, that needed to get over to base somehow as well. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, maybe before we go into the treasury, like, what's important to realize is, like, even though now most of the governance should happen on base, the DAO as being the collective of people, controls two treasuries, right? Or I should say not two treasuries, two time lock contract, one on mainnet and one on base. And in practice, again, it's fluid, right? People could go either side. Once they're on one side, they can go back to the other one, etc. So in some worlds, there might be some people that keep their UDT on mainnet and are, still voting on some proposals happening there, and then people on base are also voting there and voting on proposals there. The challenge, obviously, is if there's not enough people on either side to get the transaction, to get the proposals approved, well, these things won't happen. But in practice, going back to your point, the treasury being the assets that are held initially on the legacy time lock contract. Rightfully the DAO, and I think that's true. Feels like it's easier if the most of the treasury is held at the same place that where most of the governance is happening, and so in practice that means that the DAO just had to submit a proposal to say, okay, we'll move away, we'll transfer the treasury from that legacy time lock contract to the new one on base. And so that was a proposal that in practice included two steps, or actually could have included two steps or more, but maybe could have also included more. One is to take the UDT token and bring it to base, and then now it's owned by the unlock DAO time lock on base, and then swap that UDT for UP, because just like everybody else, it makes sense to not hold UDT anymore and hold UP. I think the DAO should hold UP more than UDT, and so did this. But again, the DAO could also do it the other way around. So if the DAO wanted to just say, okay, our treasury should be maintained in UDT, there could be a proposal to do that. And any other asset held by the DAO on mainnet could similarly be transferred to the DAO on base, provided that obviously such tokens exist. So, and I don't have an example here, but I'm sure not all of the token on mainnet exist on base. I know a couple of weeks ago there was we had a little bit of ARB tokens, and I don't know what the status of this, but in practice, and I don't think ARB exists on base, what I would have recommended here to do is just sell the ARB token for something like ETH, and then have the ETH go from mainnet, or actually from Arbitrum to mainnet to base, and that would have worked pretty much, exactly like we transferred the UDT to UP.
Right on. So we've got the governance set up on base at this point. The tokens that are in and connected to the time lock, those have all been set up. Governor contracts are set up so folks can vote and put in proposals. All of this is in service to the real thing, which is we've got the protocol itself, and the protocol is really a set of smart contracts. There is the unlock contract, and then there is another contract, the public lock contract. And those are the things that actually make the protocol the protocol. Those are the things that get deployed. Those are the pieces that people use in order to create events or create subscriptions or memberships, and all of the things that happen on chain happen because of those. And those two fundamental pieces of the protocol itself, those are controlled by the DAO that's on mainnet, and it is because those connections are set up. The DAO on mainnet is the thing that can change the parameters, can upgrade, can do all of the things for the protocol itself. So now, how do we get the protocol itself controlled by the new set of governor contracts that are over on Base?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, absolutely. So exactly, you have to think of the control of the networks as an asset, basically. It's a bit counterintuitive, but you have to think of the each network is actually owned by an address, and that address is somehow an asset. And basically, the way that the cross governance works is we leverage the Gnosis Safe infrastructure. So Gnosis Safe is a multisig, actually more than multisig. It's obviously most people know the multisig thing, but it's kind of what is called a wallet abstraction framework. So it's a way to kind of have instead of being it's a wallet as in something like MetaMask or something that is kind of just can send transaction. It's something that has logic around what transaction can be sent and how they're being sent. And so right now on all of the chains, the unlock protocol is owned by a multisig, and that multisig has a special module to say, and I shouldn't say multisig, is owned by a safe, by an account abstraction contract. And that account abstraction contract has a special rule to say the only people that can send me orders or can send me transactions are in fact, or the only address is a specific address on Ethereum mainnet. That was, how it's done. And so basically that Gnosis Safe that controls the unlock network on every single of the chain that we're deployed on says, I will only listen to instructions that are coming from the address of the DAO on mainnet. And so the only thing we need to do is submit a proposal to the DAO, to Legacy DAO, I should say, to say, okay, fine, DAO on mainnet, send an instruction to all of your, Gnosis safes on all of the chains to say, from now on, the instructions are going to come not from us, as in the DAO on mainnet anymore, but from the DAO on Base. And so that's how you transfer ownership. And obviously that is something that is to be voted on. But once it's been voted on and approved by everyone, the next step was to execute that. And all of a sudden now, all of the unlock contracts on every chain are still owned by the same Gnosis Safe, the same account abstraction contract. But now that account abstraction contract only takes its instruction from the Base time lock. So now the Base network. And that's how we transferred ownership, if you want, of the unlock local smart contract on all of the side chains to the time lock on Base.
Got it. So it's basically here is the contract that is able to tweak and adjust the parameters and upgrade all of the different instances of the unlock contract itself across the various chains. It was able to only take instructions from the set of governance contracts and time lock over on mainnet. And then there's a proposal that said, okay, actually now going forward, if this proposal passes, you will now only take instructions from the time lock that's over on Base. Is that pretty close?
It's more than close. That's spot on. That's exactly that.
Oh, even better. Awesome. So yes, I mean, there was a ton of stuff that needed to get done behind the scenes. And so just in the last couple of minutes here, I want to throw it back to Stella and Post. We've done all of these bits of heavy lifting and basically, kind of reconstruct this DAO in a new place and then change all of the pointers over to it so that it would continue to to work going forward. What types of things have you noticed now that the DAO is over on base versus on mainnet? What have you noticed a difference in velocity of proposals or ease of getting things through? What have been some of the the benefits or changes that you've seen?
Host, you want to go first? No, I don't think so. Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I think right now it's still kind of newish to everyone. This is also why we put this live stream together today, to try and inform more people. What I've seen though is that a lot more people have become delegates on the new Tally platform. So I think that's a very good sign. We also recently had some new proposals coming up from people who hadn't done a proposal, I want to assume in a while or never did it before. There is some attention as well from fellow protocols. Yeah, I think it's just a lot of new stuff happening now. And I think part of the reason for that is for sure also this move. I think, like I said before, I think there's still a little bit of a learning curve. I just had, I want to say, a conversation this morning with someone in the DAO who was like, I'm still having trouble to figure out how to bridge and swap. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of hand holding as well until people can walk by themselves. But that's fine. That's what we're here for. And yeah, I had a really nice chat this morning at Let's Grow DAO, as I told you guys. And yeah, I think there's a lot more interest from people as well, because at Let's Grow DAO, there were a lot of people actually who are already using Unlock Protocol. And even the ones who use it, and I speak from my own experience, it's endless, right? Like Julia made sure this is a maze of wonders. So even if people are using the protocol, there's still something new and exciting to discover. It never gets boring. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that this was done. And I think now we can bring more people in to become active when it comes to on-chain governance. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Awesome. And Post, maybe you've found the mute button now. Anything you want to add to that?
I found the button. I found both the buttons. I have too many buttons.
Too many buttons.
I think one of the things that I would like to kind of talk about that we kind of encountered that you guys kind of touched on that I think is kind of would be very important for people to know is that process of going, moving the DAO from mainnet over to base, and the act of the proposals that existed prior and cutting off those proposals before the proposals start getting put onto the actual new location where you're moving. Because I think that was one of our biggest hiccups, was like this ability to like start putting proposals up over here, but we still needed UDT to be voted on the proposals that were being put in. And those of us where we didn't really cut off any more proposals as a DAO, so we kind of left it open, and then there was just this delayed where we needed a couple people left over with UDT to vote on those proposals on the mainnet to kind of get those through. And that's one of the biggest hiccups I think we had as an experience of a DAO. And my question to the Unlock team is, what was the biggest hiccup you guys had trying to make this move all happen seamlessly, in quotes, of course?
Yeah, I'm going to throw that to Julian, who was neck deep in figuring out all of the technical moving parts that were required in order to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can see how it's new, and so from that perspective, I can definitely relate with the fact that it's not obvious for a lot of you guys and be like, wait, what's going on here? But in practice, I'd argue, this is actually not really unique, or actually, what we've done is unique. But in practice, in terms of what you're actually doing is not very different from what you can do in the Web2 space, in the Web3 space. Sorry, with other things. And I see Stella has her hand raised.
I have questions too. May I?
Go ahead.
Questions. Yeah. Okay, because when I was at the Let's Grow DAO space this morning, I tried to answer these questions as best as I could. But essentially, I was asked why base and not another layer 2, right? So maybe you have an answer for this. And
yeah, let's actually answer that one first. And I think we discussed this initially, but yeah. So there was, we on 15 networks, I think, right now, and at the time we're on 12. There's two types of network. There is the L1s and there is the L2s. The L1s would be stuff like Ethereum mainnet, but again, rolled out because too expensive, or Polygon, or Gnosis Chain, or Avalanche, or Celo at the time, even though Celo is now migrating to become an L2. The part of these L1s is, even though there are bridges and stuff like this, they don't actually inherit from the security guarantees that Ethereum mainnet has. So we rolled them out. And then so we end up with several L2s, and Optimism, Base, Arbitrum being the main three one. And we discussed between these three. Basically the number one decision factor was for us, as I said, cheap gas, and Base is the cheapest of the three, but both of the three of them are actually cheap, so that would not necessarily be a big deal to be on Arbitrum rather than Base. But the main decision factor in the end was the fact that that's where we had the most activity. We had the most activity on Base, and realized, if this is where most of the creators are using, then we should probably move the DAO there. What's interesting about that move of the DAO, obviously, and I'm not announcing anything here, but eventually it could move to some other place. The system that we built is actually something that is not, coupled to Base or coupled to Ethereum mainnet. We've built a system where there's networks, there's really protocols. The protocol is deployed on multiple networks, and in practice, the governance can happen anywhere, even though that requires a move, but it can happen anywhere. And so if people in the community eventually say, we don't want to be on Base, we want to be on a brand new chain called the Alpha chain. Well, you know what? The DAO can decide to go there, and it's not like anybody else is required. So to make it even clearer, like we at Labs, spearheaded this because we know that in our ecosystem we don't actually have a lot of devs or a lot of people that have the time and resources to do these kind of things. But anybody could have done what we've done. Like we don't have access to any special, backstage thing, or our addresses are not special in any way. We just know how this thing works, which I know is kind of a superpower here. But it's also all public, and I don't have any secret knowledge, secret backdoor, secret button that we can press and that nobody else can press. Stella, and you had another question.
Yeah. This was really helpful, but I'm really glad that I did not tell people BS, because I also said that Base seemed like a really popular breeding ground for what the protocol offers. So maybe I did answer that right. Check. Okay. So the other question that I got is, are we afraid people might confuse our new UP token with the original token of Laxo blockchain, which is also called UP? Curious if you will answer this the same way I did.
I actually had no idea that there was another UP token. I think when we looked for the thing, Chris and I went on CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko, and there was no UP token. So we're like, what, that's good enough for us. So I actually didn't know about the UP token in the Laxo chain. And I'm on CoinGecko right now. If I type UP, I don't see any token. I would love for them to show the Unlock Protocol token, but I think there's not enough trading activity for that to happen yet. Hopefully that's gonna change soon.
Okay, yeah. I answered it this way because I knew there is an UP token, but I said, Laxo considers itself to be another layer 1 chain. And since we moved to layer 2 in the Ethereum ecosystem, I don't think there will be a confusion or any overlap.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, okay, cool. That were my two questions.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And if folks do have other questions about this, definitely feel free to jump by the DAO Discord at discord.unlock-protocol.com. We will have this replay up. It looks like there were between 100 and 200 folks on the stream. So thank you everybody who has been on the stream as well on Twitter/X, and we will cross post this to other channels as well. But thank you all, and yeah, thanks for everybody for being part of the community. This was a long effort. I mean, it took several months to do all of these various steps because they needed to be done right and they needed to be done in order, and there was definitely dependencies between them, or had to do one before we could do the next one. So it's been a ton of great learning post. You did bring up one good question, and so I think the one other learning is, when doing these kinds of big moves, understand sort of what the freeze date and freeze window is for doing proposals, in the same way that you see a lot of development organizations, they will do code freezes during particular periods of time. I've seen a lot of e-commerce orgs, like around the Super Bowl, a couple days before, and a couple days after, they'll do code freezes so nothing breaks during that if they're running a big ad, because they want to make sure everything is up and stable. So thinking through some of those kind of process and cultural aspects are things. But we will have this up. Folks can review, and we'll do a write-up on this as well. And thank you all very much. And next week, we've got a number of other new things happening. We're going to have the Unlock DAO call on Tuesday. We'll have the town hall on Wednesday, and hopefully we'll see you all then.
Thank you, everyone, and see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.